Hello, and welcome to DIY Fun Ventures. If you're here, you're interested in blackworms and want to know how to grow them. The process is simple once you understand where these worms come from and what they feed on. Blackworms inhabit shallow water marshes, ponds, and swamps. They prefer muddy areas with sediment, such as small pieces of rock, leaves, and dead plants. Here, they feed on decaying vegetation and microorganisms. And this is what exactly I've tried to accomplish here. This is a 15-gallon aquarium filled halfway to mimic shallow waters. You want to try to keep the water levels low because the worms can die in deep water. They need proper water movement and air. This is why in addition to the sponge filter, I also have a large air stone. This creates nice water movement and adds tons of air. I also have a water heater. I keep the temperature in this aquarium minimum 75 degrees. Now if you look in the back, you should be able to see rocks and plant roots. This is where the worms live, where I'm not feeding them. There's a lot of debris collected between the rocks full of food. The front is bare glass. This is where I feed them and collect them to feed my fish. This way it is easier to collect the worms without a bunch of sediment. Plus it makes cleaning the tank much easier. In here you can see the water movement being created by the air bubbles, and you can see how healthy the worms are. Now let's talk about culturing the blackworms. In perfect conditions, they should multiply on their own. But to expedite this, I just mix the rocks around. This process breaks the worms in half, and then the halves regenerate and turn into more worms. You can simply mix them around like this. This kind of gets all the sediment going, and kind of water gets dirty and dark. But then after a few minutes, all that water will just settle down. And hopefully you broke down enough worms to, to create a lot more worms. You see all the sediment that was in those rocks. Eventually all the sediment somehow moves back into those rocks and just stays there in a corner. And these are the rocks I'm using. You just want to be careful not to drop them onto the glass, not to break the bottom of your aquarium. I found that these bigger rocks are better than just sand or gravel. It makes cleaning easier, and plus, like I said, breaking down the worms is much easier with bigger rocks. And here's another view of the back of the aquarium. You can see all the rocks, dead leaves, roots. Hopefully a perfect environment for the worms to grow. And as far as I can tell, they're happy. Now let's talk about the water changes. I do the water change at the same time I do my aquarium water changes. I simply use the overflow setup to empty my aquarium water into the worm tank. You can see how the water just empties through this, and it just pours down into the worm tank. And then in here I have a pump that empties the water out of this tank. I went with this setup because it's convenient for me. Plus my aquarium water is a better quality water than the water in a worm tank, and the water in an aquarium has some nutritional value too. Whatever floats in my aquarium will become food for the worms. Speaking of food, let me show you what I feed the worms. Here you see leftovers of everything I've collected over time. I put a little bit of everything and some spirulina powder. Some of these fish bites. Most of this food is already kind of stale, so my fish don't want to eat it. I put some of this old brine shrimp. Put some shrimp food, different kinds. Leftovers of this dry flake food. Oops. And of course put some spirulina powder to give some extra nutrition. I believe the worms eat this and they get extra nutrition in them, and then when the fish eat them, then they get that spirulina. Then add some water in there and add some more. Let it soak for a little while and then mash it into a paste. You want to kind of remove all the stuck pieces, whatever wasn't mashed properly, and kind of give it another go. This part is a little messy. Once you've mixed everything together, properly mash it together, and once it's all done, just fill up these little containers. I have this little plastic container. You could have plastic or glass. Fill them up. Then I like to add some extra shrimp food. This is just to close the opening so the food doesn't ooze out or come out too easy when it's inside of the water. This process is quite messy. You want to wipe your hands after you're done with this properly. Then after the containers are ready, I just simply freeze them. And here it is, already frozen. I'm going to simply lower it in an aquarium and position it at the bottom. And soon the worms will smell this and come for dinner. And as you can see, an hour later we have worms feeding. This is the easiest time to harvest them and feed them to the fish. Just as easy as hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel for future DIY videos. I mean, for real, if you guys did enjoy this video and you learned something new, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. This will really help my channel. Thank you and have a good day.